Hello, I'm Chelsea, and welcome to This is Hard to Say. I'm here to talk about topics that are hard to say, which was originally birthed in 2020 from my lifelong eating disorder. I would love to educate people on disordered eating and also create a platform for us to talk about hard things like trauma, childhood, even simple interactions in our day-to-day life, joy, art. So this really is for all humans. And with that, we'll get going. Before we get going, I have a disclaimer. Today we are talking about drug use and addiction, and we do mention 12-step program, but in no means are we promoting them or spokespersons for the program. We do find them helpful, but just to give you that disclaimer, listen with caution and take the proper steps for yourself and not based off of anything we say. We are recording from my house today with this mini mic because I still don't have the right setup at my house, but I want to introduce my friend Seth. He's here with me today to talk about some deep, tough, hard to talk about topics. And I want to open up the platform first with letting him introduce himself. So introduce yourself, but then I also would like to know, what is your relationship with food?
Thank you, Chelsea. My name is Seth. I live in Venice Beach, California. And thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. My relationship with food. I love food. Foodie, is that like, I don't know. It seems like a term I don't want to call myself, but I do like food a lot and trying and eating different types of food. But also, I can definitely eat my feelings, as I call it. I can really, I've noticed that, I don't know, in the past 5-6 years, that since I'm not actively using drugs or alcohol, that I can definitely turn to food and eat and overeat at times. And even when I'm bored, I eat, stress, eat. So it's, I definitely recognize it in my life. Part of, I don't know if we call it addiction or it's just something that I do notice. Yeah.
So you're not the only one who does that. I've talked to many people who, it's really closely tied with emotions. Like for me, I didn't eat because I didn't want to deal with emotions. And so not eating kept me empty in all regard, in every way, really. So I guess my next question with that, and then we'll move on to other topics, is since recognizing it, I guess, is there a desire to create a different relationship with it, or are you okay with processing your emotions in that way? Because I think being a foodie is fantastic. Loving food is great. I love food now. But yeah, do you want that to transform or change or process your emotions differently? I think you get what I'm asking.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like a cycle where I go through different parts of my life where I recognize it and I'm like, cool, that's enough of that for now, and go for a bike ride or get outside or do writing or go to my meetings or something like that. So it fluctuates on and off. Would I love to be able to have a different tool to always use instead of like going to the cabinet and grabbing some empty calories to eat? I would love to. I just don't have a solution for it at the moment. And I go off and on I won't call it diets, like lifestyle changes around food. So that's also something that constantly changing. I may go 6 months without sugar, bread, or snacks. And then I'm like using my other tools. And then I'm fall back right into it. Kind of like the what do they call that, dieting, where people go on and off?
Yo-yo dieting.
Yes. Yeah.
So, since you brought up your meetings, from my understanding, you go to Narcotics Anonymous, and I'd love to open the platform for you to give us a little history, how long you've been sober, what sobriety has given you, and if you want to go into the past of what brought you into sobriety, that'd be fantastic. And maybe, start wherever you want on that journey and share what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, you asked for it. Here it comes. I want to start by saying I respect anybody, and this isn't making any correction on anybody for using the different terms. For myself, you'll hear me refer to it as being clean versus sober. It helped me in my recovery and my journey because, to me, we'll get there in a moment. But for me, view sober as more of like a immediate time. So when somebody's like, I'm sober enough to drive, or like I'm sober tonight, I'm not drinking, or it's just mainly definition because of wordy, I'm abstaining from alcohol and liquor. For me, it says clean of all substances. If you want to include caffeine in that, that's fine. I'm not abstaining from caffeine, but mood and mind altering substances minus caffeine, because you can still. Anyways, I drink a lot of caffeine, but that's where I'm at. So clean of all mood and mind altering substances that are going to really affect my life. It's been now 10.5 years. I got clean in January 21st, 2013. It's crazy to me that it's been that long, but it feels like a long time, but it also feels like no time, which is interesting. And yeah, the process of it all starting. I was going through, let's back up before that, and there were many times where I like saw or recognized I had a problem, and I would take a break, move to a new city, move out of the country. Cool, I'm done with that part of my life, and it would always found me, or I always found it.
So that's fascinating to me, because I feel like a lot of times people move to like start again, or did you find that moving created an opening to reinvent yourself and I guess leave the environment you were in? Because I think our environment obviously affects us a lot, and when you're surrounded by people who are also partaking in mood altering and physically altering substances, then it's easier to do it. So did you find that to be part of it, was like reinventing yourself and finding a community that maybe wasn't partaking so intently or deeply, I guess, in that scene?
That's a great question. Yeah, so I thought like that would take care of it, or distancing myself from people or communities or a dealer or something in that respect. But like in the end, I was the one with the problem. I was the one with the issue, that I would seek it no matter where I went. And it wasn't until like I hit my ultimate rock bottom to where I could recognize that was with other people's help and suggestions that was the case. I also fully didn't quit or abstain from all substances, all drugs. So like the harder ones, I would say, cool, I'm done with that one. But for me, I'm gonna still smoke weed and drink. And everybody has their own opinions and experiences with those different substances. For me, weed would always bring me back to whatever else my next higher high was. So I say, yeah, I'm just going to do this less intense drug, and then it would always bring me back to the downfalls of the harder stuff that was harder to quit, that definitely took me down in the end. So location stuff, didn't really work.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Marijuana was like a gateway for you, which I think a lot of people have experienced that, like when I was in my eating disorder, it was like emotional, like anything emotional was like a gateway for me. Like I would feel an emotion and be like, oh, we're not eating ever again. But I mean, it's a different, I guess like having an eating disorder is similar in a lot of ways to an addiction, but it is slightly different. It's like such an intense mental illness. But yeah, I guess speak to, like, I am curious about your rock bottom and what brought you to a place of knowing that this is bigger than just moving or sticking with a lighter or a different, I don't even want to say lighter substance, or a different substance such as marijuana or drinking. I think both of those could probably be detrimental to like anybody, but yeah, I'm curious about that road, and also if you want to speak more to like moving and what that did in the grand scheme of struggling with addiction, but also what were the signs where you knew you were gonna like spiral or go darker or choose something worse, and how did that lead to your rock bottom?
Yeah. Let's see. So I've been since high school, 13, 14, 15. Started, I don't know, for me that sounded early, of just like smoking a lot of weed and drinking and always like being the most, I don't know. Can I swear on this thing?
Yeah.
The most fucked up person in situations, or holding the most, was always just something that I felt necessary, or in a sense of power as well. And I would dabble in other things, and later on, like when I would see it, pretty much for me in the beginnings of the harder drug addictions, I didn't see a problem with it until I ran out. And that was like getting dope sick. Like if you haven't got dope sick, if you're listening to this and don't know what that is, it's like getting the flu times 10 and not sleeping and not eating and sick in all orifices and just painful also. So it's not something I wish on anybody. Later on, it kicked my ass, and I never wanted to go through that again. But that's like when I would recognize that, oh, maybe I have a problem, but I'm not ready to stop. I'll just wait till I can get more, or find the person that has more to score. So that was it would cross my mind, but like as soon as I was able to get high again, I was fine with it. It was like, oh, I'm cool. I don't have a problem. So that would like have its periods of time, and then, I'd say I was going to quit that and just stick to the natural stuff, the organic stuff from the earth, like pot. And cycles would come back, and it would find me, or I would find it. I kept saying it would find me, but that's not true. I would find it. I would put myself in the situation to ask around or search. And I was doing stupid shit. Like, it all started when I was like in Mexico with friends. I used to go to Mexico with a friend every weekend for like 2 years. We would stay at his house there. And I was like taking the car and going off into the middle of like a town and waiting, giving some guy my money and just waiting there and trusting that he'd come back. And my friends were like, "You're nuts. What are you doing?" And it didn't seem crazy to me at all to be like sitting there in on a stoop of a pharmacy, like shaking and wondering if he's going to come back and nervous as hell. And then, that happened in different countries. I made some moves, and it never really stuck with me. It never really was a solution to move. I would say the end and the rock bottom was moving back home with my parents in 2011, I think it was, into 2012, and kind of doing that whole cycle again and finding my drug of choice. And it was like this cycle up until that last day, which was like I needed a job. I have a job. And my daily routine was telling my parents, who were letting me live at their house, putting a roof over my head and food in front of me, and I was in credit card debt at the time. And I would tell them that I was going to look for substitution jobs, like to teach kids. First of all, what kind of right mind was I in to go into schools and to substitute? But I passed whatever the test was, the GMAT or something, whatever the test was to pass, to get qualified. I was qualified. And so back to the story, I would tell them if they needed somewhere to go all day, that I was going to substitute teach, and I would drive to a parking lot, which was maybe 2 minutes from our house. And I would park, and I would do my drugs, and in my car all day. And at the end, I had to come up for a reason why I was coming home late. I would get out of my car, I would change my gym clothes, and I would pour water all over myself. And I would come home, be like, I'm so sweaty, I need to take a shower, don't bother me, and go to bed.
Wait, so while you were faking the substitute teaching and you were doing drugs in your car, would you just hang out in your car all day, or like what would you do on the drugs?
So I was doing drugs that I don't think there's need to name the drug, but it was definitely a downer, so it was something that would either make me pass out, nod out, or sleep. So I would just sit in my car and use and pass out, use again and pass out, and then I would wake up and be like, oh, I gotta get home. And I would fake this whole gym thing and come home, and that was going on for months. And it brought me to a point where one day the guy I got my drugs from was like, hey, I'm going to Disneyland with the family. Come over, make a stop, and I'm going to be gone for like 5 days or something. So I got what I thought would last me a week. It lasted me 2 days.
Wow.
And at the end of those 2 days, I was fighting to not get sick. So I was drinking everything in the house, I was smoking everything I had, I was taking the other pills I had to sleep and whatnot. Meanwhile, my parents are out of town, and I'm in their house causing a ruckus. And long story short, they try to call me just to see what's going on, how the house is, and they noticed something was wrong with me over the phone. And they came home to basically see their son in his bed with spilled things all over the room, broken glass. I don't know why I tried to fix the internet, but I cut my finger and tried to fix the internet, and there was blood everywhere. It was pretty bad, and it was embarrassing after the fact, but they basically came home and saw all of this. Still didn't necessarily think there was a problem, because maybe it was just alcohol.
Wait, so up until that point, they actually still thought that you were substitute teaching and had your life together, and this was just like an episode?
I think they knew something was up. They probably definitely knew that I was smoking pot and that something was going on, but not for sure. I was very good at lying. I was very good at manipulating. A lot of amends that I made up later. But even waking up the next morning, finding my keys gone from them taking my laptop, my phone, nowhere to communicate with the outside world, it took some days for me to tell them what was really going on.
So when they took those things away and you were already kind of spiraling down into what's the word when you're coming off of them and you're not okay? Withdrawing. Yeah, so when you were withdrawing, did you just start to withdraw harder and become really sick? And I mean, I can't imagine being in that situation and then you're not in a facility where there's support.
Yeah, I was. That next day I woke up and I started to get sick, and I knew I was going to get even sicker, and the questions started coming, and they didn't really realize how sick that I was and I was going to be. I basically the next 9 nights didn't sleep at all. I wasn't really eating. I was trying to eat, I wasn't really eating, didn't have an appetite. It finally came out a couple days later when I was like, I'm going to tell you everything. This is everything I've ever done, and I've been addicted to this, I have a problem with this, I've been doing this when I go say I'm applying for substitute teaching jobs, and none of that is true, and I've been lying to you for as long as I can remember about all of this. And continued to be sick, and we were like, what are we going to do with you? We were like, maybe, I don't think it clicked necessarily that I was an addict at that point still, until it came a point where I realized that I was like, I can't do this, you guys can't help me with this, I need to go into a facility, I need to go into rehab.
And so at that time, were you actually facing yourself in a way where you're like, okay, I know I need help and I want help? Because I remember even when I was hospitalized, I still had that moment of not really clicking in my brain because my brain was so unmanaged. It was just in such a sick state. You said a great point because you were like, I didn't realize, or gosh, what did you say? It had to do with realizing when you wanted drugs and you needed them that you might have a problem. It's crazy how we play in these denial spaces when we're in addiction or in an eating disorder, and you're not admitting it, but you're lying to everybody and you're putting on a really good face. It's wild how much you can get away with, even with yourself. It's you're lying to yourself first. And so I guess for me, it took a friend to be like, oh, you still need help, like, you're clearly not okay. And I knew I wasn't okay, I just didn't know what to do. And so, I guess my question is, were you in that state of, like, I'm not really in denial anymore, I know I need help? Because even you saying, like, I still didn't think I had an addiction problem, but you knew you needed something else but your parents to help you. And so I guess, like, where were you at in that mind space of, like, having denial happen and knowing, because we don't really get better until we want to get better. And so can you talk a little bit about all of that, even though I just kind of gibbered through that, but I think you get what I'm saying.
I think there was a time that I remember sitting on this lazy boy of theirs, and, like, I'd never written out anything, and I just started writing, and I remember writing at that point without any, like, instructions or that. Like, I have a problem, can't control it, and I need help. And that was, like, the first time I admitted to myself and everybody around me that it was a problem. It was time to do something. I think that I was not willing to give it all up yet. And even at that point, I might have been like, well, maybe I need help with this substance, but I could go back to smoking weed. Soon learned with other people's suggestions for meetings and rehab and stuff that wasn't probably the best idea.
Right.
And I learned from crazy horror stories that wasn't a good path that I would take. But I can vividly remember making that decision and then deciding to go to rehab. But I wasn't going to do 12-step. That was not in my world. That was for cults, and that was for religions and people that were lost. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I looked at places online, and I was convinced that the place I found was great. It's up in Watsonville, Santa Cruz Mountains kind of ish, mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, right outside of Santa Cruz.
So Watsonville, and looked beautiful, and there was no 12-step, and there was steam rooms and saunas and views and beautiful people. And this is all going to make sense because we'll tie in later. And I told my parents I didn't want to go anywhere without my brothers. Like, I wanted my brothers to come in town and take me. Like, I wanted them to be with me, like the whole family. I needed their support and their comfort. At first they were like, no, and then I was like, well, that's how I'm going to go. I need them. So they came into town, and we all went together. And we go to this place, and I was so stoked to be there. I was eating pizza for the first time. I was eating some things. I was eating pizza, and then we got a tour, and my parents were like, you sit here and eat. We're going to go handle with the payment and stuff. And I'm sitting there eating, talking to some other folks, stoked, right? And all of a sudden, they come out. My dad goes, get your stuff. We're getting the fuck out of here. And my brother's like, let's go. I was like, wait, I love it. I love it here. And so we get in the car. I'm like, what happened? I was ready. Like, we're not going there. We'll talk it over lunch. And found out that I was so in love with the place. While they were in there trying to make a credit card payment, my little brother was in the corner because he was very suspicious of some signs and some names that were around. And my brother Levi, who's not with us anymore, came and was like, dude, what are you doing on your phone? Like, what are you doing here? Why are you on your phone, weirdo? He goes, look. She pointed at a name, and it was L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology, and some other things that were very mysterious. And I turned to my dad. They were like, Dad, Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, this is a front. What's going on? It's like, we're getting the hell out of here. So that's another thing that I'm grateful for, that almost could have got sucked into a different cult. And then found a good rehab and ended up there. So a little tangent, but fun part of the story.
So I'm curious about that's fascinating. There's a lot of gateways into cults. I mean, not that I don't want to say that Scientology is a cult, but I also want to say Scientology is a cult.
I'll say it.
So, I'm curious about rehab and what that experience was like, how long it was, some of like the key things you learned about yourself, and what life looks like moving forward, what you knew you needed for yourself moving forward, just all stuff around like the actual rehab space.
Yeah, rehab was 30 days. Some people were there longer. That's what they recommended for me. And it was, first I got sleep, and I ate, and I slept for days, and that was very important to kind of nurture my body and what I needed. And then I was still on this kick of I wasn't going to be a 12-step person, and that wasn't part of it. And what they had us do is a very routine day. So that was a great step into a new life. It was, you're going to wake up, you're going to go to one of the gym classes in the morning. It was beautiful. I mean, we had Tai Chi one day, we had Qigong, we had Pilates, we had yoga. So it was like doing the physical part, getting that nourished. We'd come back and do group sessions. We'd all get to talk, and we would cry, and we would laugh, and also create great bonds in there with like new friends that were going through the same type of thing. We ate pretty healthy. Speaking of food, like at that time I was like, I'm gonna go on my healthiest lifestyle plan ever. I was in some of the best shape I was in my life after that, but that was part of it in there. We had a counselor, which was great. I never went to therapy. Maybe I did, yeah. I did go to therapy years ago, but I was always stoned in there, and I don't think it really did anything. Mm-hmm. So this is my real first therapy that I'd like to say, where I really got vulnerable and really talked with this person who seemed like they didn't have any judgments. But the most important part for me of the rehab was that they would take us to outside meetings. So they took us to all different types of A meetings, whatever anonymous meetings there were. So we get to try and see which ones we fit in with, which ones we connected with. And I was like, every chance I got, I would go, because you can opt not to go. I was like, why not? We also get to leave the property and go into town, which was also a new experience. Everything was a new experience because I was like still, all substance weren't completely out of me, so withdrawing somewhat, but more clear-headed than ever before. So yeah, they introduced us to different meetings, and I was kind of shunned away from one because I spoke about a particular substance in it that they didn't agree with. And I was really, really pissed, and I had resentments, and it brought me to another meeting, into my home, into a place where I felt really accepted. And I will forever be grateful for them shunning me from that meeting, because maybe if they hadn't done that, I wouldn't have found my place in my home with my desired meeting space. So I'm grateful for that, and I was greeted by a group of people that they were probably judging on one way or another, but as far as like what I would talk about in the meetings, it was a safe space to talk about and get the suggestions of other people. And sooner or later, I found out that I was a 12-step person and that I needed it. And I was the lost person that I was talking about for all along. And I needed this path and this guide and purpose. But I also loved it because it wasn't religious. And my higher power could be anything I wanted to. I think the most important part about the meetings that I went to was some advice that a sponsor gave me, was that like I needed to listen to other people for once in my life. And I had been listening to myself my whole life, and it had only gotten me into where I ended up. So having like the humility to accept this guidance from somebody who had been through something similar but different, but similar but different, but similar, I was willing to finally let go and just like listen to the suggestions as well as other people, and taught me very well.
So that sounds great, the structure and just a supportive environment and making friends, and I'm sure you probably still keep in touch with some of those people.
There's one person I do. Yeah, we had around like the same date that we sometimes do. It's hard to with a lot of them because it's sad to say that most people that go into rehab for their first, second, third time don't make it don't stay clean or sober, or whatever the term is they use. I believe it's because that they were forced and they weren't willing to finally do it on their own, or being open to change. So at first, yeah, I kept in touch with people, but it was sad. It was too sad and hurtful to hear about people dying or relapsing or really terrible things, or even seeing them like on the streets of San Francisco, being like, oh God, that hurts. I need to set my own boundary, and I'm not ready to be like around somebody like that yet.
I love this little mini mic. For those of you listening, not on video, we're literally sharing this tiny mic that's like attached to my phone for sound. But it's great because there's no interruption. It's just one of us talking at one time. So my next question is, what happened when you left the rehab center? Did you go back to your parents' house? I'm guessing you had to change your environment as far as who you talked to or spent your time with or reached out to, or maybe made new friends or hobbies, or had to start a routine. I'm just wondering, like, that can probably be really disoriented, going from a chaotic place to a structured place with a lot of support, and then to the transition of on your own. Was there any form of transition, or was it like, you graduated, good luck? You know, because I think that's the hardest part.
You nailed it. I think it is really the hardest part, and up to the willingness of the individual and maybe the support that they have from other people in their lives. So I also wanted to say, heard of Tiny Desk? This is Tiny Mike.
Yes, it is Tiny Mike.
It's fun though.
Stay after for music.
Yeah. Leaving rehab, they kind of set you up with like what they want to set you up for success and a plan. Some rehabs, I think they don't care and they'll take you back for money, but this one was exceptionally a great one, and they would set you up for success, wanting to know what your next steps were. And I realized that going home wasn't the best idea, and that going into a house with other people in my position, they called them
halfway houses.
They call these SREs, social. Oh my God, I haven't even said it in a long time. SR, sober living out. SLE, sober living environment. That's what they call them. So that's what I set up, and they even took me out of rehab to go tour a couple to see which ones would be best fit for me. So I found one that was a good fit. Talked to my parents, and they were very supportive on that. And then they were like, well, we also offer an outpatient thing we recommend people doing afterwards. And I thought, nah, I don't need that. But then, like, what really got me going to it, or like wanting, excited about it, was I was so into fitness after 30 days of being in rehab that I'm like, I don't have a job. I can't afford a gym. This place had a gym. I'd still go to 5 days a week. I'd go to the Pilates or the yoga, meditation. Then acupuncture was all with it.
Oh, wow.
And all this. So I'm like, cool, I'll do that for the gym stuff, and the counseling and group sessions are there. I ended up using all of my savings to go to, it was 8 weeks of it. So I was doing that all day. I'd wake up in the morning, go to outpatient, ride my bike. I didn't have my car back. Ride my bike to outpatient, do that, do the gym, come home, go to a meeting, maybe like at noon. Then I would maybe go work out again, and then I would go to another meeting in the evening. So I was going to like 2 meetings a day, sometimes 3 meetings. Living in San Rafael, and the recovery, like the community there is pretty big, lots of meetings within a few block radius. So that became my life, and 2-3 meetings a day, riding my bike everywhere, sometimes going to visit my siblings in Oakland, but maintaining such like healthy lifestyle all around. So being clean, physically active, spiritual. I was meditating and doing writing in the program, going to these meetings, gaining a new community, having a support system were all very important parts at the beginning. When those 8 weeks were up of outpatient, they asked me if I wanted to continue, and I said I can't really pay to continue. They said, no, we want to give you a scholarship for another 8 weeks. you are a star student. Everybody looks up to you. And I was like, me?
Yay!
What? No way. And for the same reasons, I kind of took it. I was like, great, I can use the gym.
Why not?
Free counseling.
Yeah, say yes to that.
It was great. So I did that. And then finally, I think it was after 120 days after rehab, maybe it was even 180 days, that I finally peed clean. Because they were testing me. So marijuana stayed in my system for so long because I was such a heavy user. And dabs were just coming out at that time before I quit. So that was like, yeah. And so finally when I did that, I cried and I was like, okay.
Officially clean.
One more step. Officially clean, yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. You know, one thing I really like to address on this podcast is accessibility and people having access to what they need or not. I mean, a lot of people don't have access to being able to go to a facility. Very much so in the eating disorder realm too. It's like you can't work when you're getting better or when you're that sick. Like you just can't. And then you have to have the means or support from family or other ways in order to get that help. And so to me, like I've also spoken to other people who have gone to facilities for other reasons, like, you know, severe anxiety, severe depression, just other things they're struggling with. And, you know, it in a way, like, I hate saying this, but it's a luxury to be able to do those things because they are expensive and we don't have the best system set up for people who aren't in the same bracket of being able to pay for it or even being able to work because they're so ill with what they're struggling with. So I guess I wanted to ask you, like, are you aware of any programs that are available for people that have different accessibility levels or need a little bit more help financially but want help and they just don't know how to find it? Or, you know, like, obviously the 12-step programs I think are available, but do you know of anything else that people could turn to or I guess advice you'd give or tips you'd give?
Unfortunately, I don't have other resources as far as like folks being able to go to a facility. I also know that worked for me, going to a facility and a rehab.
Yeah.
And I feel so privileged that I was able to and grateful to my family for supporting in that journey. And I know so many people that have got to where they want to be or clean or a lot of time and good recovery. And I can say that because you can have a lot of time and no recovery and be like a completely shitty person. Just because you have time doesn't mean you are recovered in air quotes. But I do know plenty of people that have gone to 12-step meetings and been so committed because they were ready and open-minded and willing to do the program, what everybody else said, and just stuck with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason why they say the tagline is keep coming back, because you may not like the first, second, third, fourth, 10th, 100th meeting.
Right.
But one day you're going to hear something like I did, that I connected with somebody that didn't look like me, didn't dress like me, didn't act like me, but said some things that just clicked in my head.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm where I'm supposed to be. So to answer your question, I could only say in the 12-step meeting that might be right for that person.
Yeah. I fully agree, and I think a lot of programs that are accessible get a bad rap from people, and it's really a bummer because it is, like, the 12-step program I think is incredibly helpful. Like, for me, Al-Anon kind of saved my life dealing with various people that had, like my mom, for instance, and just like learning how to get better when someone around you when you're little has a problem with drugs and alcohol. And I've had many friends with great success through the 12-step program. But I agree. I think you have to have the willpower to continue to go. And someone said to me many years ago, the hardest people in your life will teach you the most. And I think we really have to hold tight to that, because everyone could be triggering at some point. That doesn't mean that you need to step away from them. like we're all teachers to each other. So I think about that when I think about programs like that, because you're going to encounter all kinds of people at different parts in their path. And sometimes it's hard to be further along or not as far along as someone and be really triggered by that person who is in the depths of it or who's completely farther away from you, and you're like, man, I want to be there. You know, do you still attend meetings, and what are they like for you now?
I do not attend meetings as often as I'd like to. I'm always in a better mood and feeling better when I do. Moving to LA, I've not been able to click with a group like I did when I lived in the Bay. Home group, as they call it, a group that you regularly go to and serve at, and have a community that can keep you accountable and keep them accountable. I've not found that in LA, and maybe it's me, and maybe it's as much as I travel. So, yeah, goals are always to go to more meetings and to get back. And I've started I do writing, still do writing, sponsor, and I'm in communication with him. But no, I mean, not as many meetings as I'd like to. There's other parts of my life that I'm filling a void or a hole with that is a crutch sometimes. But the moral of the story is I could be more active in my recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually, I could be more active in my recovery. I totally hear that completely. And I think it's so amazing that you're in a place where you're like, you don't need to rely on like 2 meetings a day or 1 meeting a day or even weekly meetings. Like, you're clean, you're living your life, you're living an active life, you're traveling, you're encountering a bunch of people at different levels of their life. And so that leads me to ask, I'm assuming and guessing that during recovery you uncovered a lot of stuff that was underneath your desire to partake in substances. And are you open or willing to talk about some of those things? Because once we uncover that stuff, I think we can actually heal, like, in a cool way.
The deep stuff.
Stuff.
We've peeled the onion away, the layers.
Yes.
Why are we here? Yeah. I think there was a few reasons, like, why I like to get high. I found it as something to do to take away different parts of my life that maybe I didn't like. Not fitting in a lot of the time, not feeling good enough, not feeling smart enough. Feeling, it helped to numb a lot of this chatter in my head. It helped with sometimes fitting in with a group. It gave us a commonality. Beyond that, did we have commonalities? Who knows? Maybe sometimes. But the people that were doing stuff with me, like the harder stuff, probably not. Just like, what do you have and how can I get more of it from you and manipulate you? But that was our commonality. I was also like a loner user. Like, I was using a lot just by myself, the harder stuff. But yeah, uncovering things like always been conscious of my body also, and covering it up and numbing certain thoughts and pains around that. I still am not always perfectly comfortable in my body, and could explain like the fluctuating food lifestyles I have. I think a good example I have was when I was younger and I wasn't a great reader, and I think I struggled reading fast or in the smart group. I think it put a lot of pressure on me as I got older, and not being like the smartest or close to the smartest person in the room or in any of the honor programs or any of that. And I've always had friends that felt much smarter, ended up going to better schools, and I kind of just took an easy route at that point. It was like, oh, this is my life. I'm just gonna kind of take the easy way out and the average way and do drugs while I do it. And later on, when like uncovering these was just through a lot of writing and realizations that I am who I'm exactly supposed to be. I can't really dwell on the past, and that took a lot of time, because it was like, well, I could have done this and I should have done this and I would have been here. I would have had a house, and I would have had a car, and I would have been successful by society norms. Which is also something I'm like, oh, I have a lot of making up to do, which is why I'm not like as far as some of my friends, but you know, that gets put on the shelf every now and then and taken off. So that's continuous work. Yeah, I don't know if I answered the question on that.
Yeah, you did. It's just a process, and I was thinking about how I think the years you've been clean are probably less than the years you weren't. I mean, that's true for me and my eating disorder. I've been recovered way less than I had it, which is kind of wild to think about because I thought I would have a lot more setbacks, and I had 3 years of setbacks, so that's very real, but it's cool to be on the other side. And is that true for you, being clean less than the amount you weren't clean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's so fascinating to me because you're just creating your life now, and in a clear-headed way, which I could really see struggling with that, like, oh, I'm not as far as I want to be, or I don't have the life I want to be in. And really, we just have now all the time, and everybody else does too. And I'm sure we could all look back and be like, oh, I wish I had done that or did this. I mean, I think we all kind of have that little speckle of regret every now and then in our lives. So I guess another question I have, if you're willing to share, is since meetings are kind of here and there and you haven't really found your group in LA, what are some things that keep you in the space of being clean? Like, are you now like, man, I would never go back. Like, I love clean. Like, I can't believe I did that. I don't even want to feel that anymore. Or is it something that you're still kind of like, I guess, sometimes face a battle with if things get harder? Because I think for me, like, if I have high emotions, I'll feel a lot of anxiety and be like, I don't want to eat. But now I at least eat still, and rather than kind of dipping back into like an issue. And so yeah, I'm kind of curious about that.
Great question. I'm very grateful that I get to do a lot of things that I do in my life, and it was things that I wondered if I'd be able to do right in rehab. Like a lot of things I do, people are like, you don't do drugs there? You don't drink or smoke at these events? It's like, I love to go. I still go to festivals. I go to festivals clean. I go to Burning Man clean. I went to one Burning Man not clean back in 2012, and I've been 4 times since, and yeah, they've all been clean. I get to do those things. I'm around friends that sometimes are on psychedelics. Does it bother me? When they don't tell me that they are, and they're like, surprise, 4 hours into it peaking. But I actually find it can be fun when somebody's on psychedelics and they're like, at a concert, festival, or something, hey, we're going to take this tonight. Just want to let you know. I'm like, thanks for letting me know. That's cool. Now I know when I can depart and when I don't feel comfortable why that is. Back to your question. It helps me remember where I was, and especially like the rock bottom at the end, and the lies and manipulations I was doing to people that were the closest to me, like my family. I don't want to ever have to put on that mask again. Like, everything was painful, but like putting on a mask and not being my true self
is worse.
Is almost worse, if not worse. And being able to like look my parents in the eyes and my siblings in the eyes and have genuine conversations with them and tell them this is easy stuff, but tell them where I'm going, and I'm actually going there, or where I've been, or what I'm doing, and none of it's like bullshit. That helps. It helps to know that stories that people have gone out and been like, I can have one beer or one joint, and then they end up in the worst parts of San Francisco, doing things that they wouldn't do for a drug that they never took before. It's something I never want to do. Now, am I doing something where like, and I smell like pot? I'm like, oh, that smells bomb. Maybe it's even the strain I remember smoking one day. Do I want to smoke it? No. Does it smell good? Maybe. But is it for me? Not today. And it's a simple thing that the program taught you. It's like these cliche things that we say, not for today. As long as I still think about not for today, it's all good. Mm-hmm. Probably not going to be tomorrow and the next day, then not the next week. But like as soon as I have any kind of ever temptation, I'm just like, no, it's not for me. I know where it's going to bring me back to, and I never want to go back there again. It's too painful. So many different retrospect parts of my life. Would it be great to be able to have a beer with a taco or one joint? It'd be amazing. But that's not the type of person I am. And I've learned that multiple times.
Yeah, the all or nothing. I totally get it. And you touched on something that I think is a really powerful thing to talk about on the other side, and even when someone's not on the other side, and that's the mask. Because I think when we're in addiction or even an eating disorder and many other spaces, it's a choice, right? It's like we're choosing this thing or we're choosing life. And life on this side is real connection, real depth, relationships that matter, authenticity. You're showing yourself, you're showing up, you're doing your life. And when you're choosing the other thing, which is the addiction or the eating disorder or whatever else you want to put in that pile, it's like you're not choosing the other way. And this pile sucks. Like when you actually get to the heart of it, like you said, it's like you realize, like sure the high's cool, but like who's there? Who do you have to call and actually have like a real conversation with? Because you're not showing up most of the time because you're showing up for this other thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's like something that more conversations could be had about that, because we don't realize how detrimental it is to our basic needs of like just, do we have a roof? Do we have food? Do we have relationship connection? Like that's just such a basic low need, like not low need, but it's like the first need that we have. And all those things kind of go out the window and you're not taking care of yourself. And so, yeah, I'm sure you've experienced like much better relationships, and even with your family, like you said, like even having really simple conversations, because those conversations aren't simple when you're not well. Like telling them where you are, it's like you're walking around with a lie and you're keeping a wall between you and them on some level or another. And I think the other person feels it in some way, but like, do they know what to do about it? Not usually. So yeah, I just think that was a really cool thing to say and bring up, is the mask. And I think listeners will really appreciate that conversation of, what is standing in the way of you living your authentic self. Because I feel like you do, like you're super into fashion, you go to festivals and you wear whatever you want and do whatever you want, and you also do that in your life. And also like your job, I feel like your job is really fun because you're entertaining, you're putting up basically, you want to explain what you do so I don't botch it?
What do? I give, this is going to come off in a weird way if I say it this way, but I'm going to say it anyway. I give permission to adults to act silly and have fun and to engage with one another.
There we go.
Team building for corporations and groups of people, but I like the first way that I said.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Yeah, and I think that's a really cool position to have in this place that you're in. And like, you probably wouldn't have that job if you hadn't have gotten clean, and you wouldn't have the experiences that you've had on it, and wouldn't be traveling all over the place if you hadn't have done it. And it's like, you think, you look at the life that you didn't have because you chose this thing. I look at this a lot in my own life. Like, I chose an eating disorder over living, and I experienced a lot of grief in recovery over that. And now, like you said, you think about all where you would be or where you could be. Like, I think about that, and I'm like, I've already grieved that. We have now, and I'm doing now. And so I am curious, like, did you go through that grieving period in recovery where you were like, wow, I lost years?
I definitely did. Definitely still think about it and don't dwell on it as much. It's like a thought process, like, here it is, and move on. But yeah, it was definitely more of a grieving process of what I could have done and how I could have done it better, and how I could have shown up for myself and my family and been somewhere different in my life. And I believe everything happens for a reason. I didn't always, but I believe everything happens for a reason. And now I can look at it as like, this all happened to bring me to this point in my life. A good example of this was that when my brothers came to see me off, and my brother Levi said, "You have not been the big brother that I've wanted and needed for so long," and it gave me like a kick in the ass. I was like, that's what I wanted to be. And so then with that, and then being at that place where they realized that Scientology was all this, I believe, this ripple effect that helped me get clean to then be able to be in the space that I was. My brother got sick, he had a brain tumor and cancer, I was in hospice. And if it wasn't for, I believe, those words and them being there in the beginning, that I may not have been there to be able to care for him in hospice and to hold his hand in the last few moments of his life. It was there, or I might have been still in my car. And so I'm like so grateful and believing in that everything is happening for a reason. And yeah, I got to get clean and be there for him and hold him with my other brother and his wife at the time while saying our last goodbyes.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's, yeah. I was going to ask if you wanted to share about Levi, but obviously I knew it was a part of the story. I just didn't know where. But yeah, that's so real. You know, when we choose these other things that are hurting us, we don't realize how much they're hurting everyone around us. And a lot of people don't really know how to have those conversations with people who are in addiction or in an eating disorder or struggling with whatever they're struggling with, and have those conversations of like, hey, I need you too. Like, you're not the only one that exists. Because in those moments, you're the only one that exists, and you're not really, you think you're thinking about other people, but you're not. And that's really powerful, and I'm so glad you were there to be, or you got to a place where you could be there for him and experience that, because that would have been, even that much more painful if you hadn't have been able to be there in the way that you were. So, and to do it clean now you're really good friends, I know, with his wife, and I feel like your relationship with your other brother is even better than it was, and with your parents, and I mean, that's like a huge thing to go through. So thank you for sharing.
Well,
so on this note, I think we're just past an hour. I do want to know, what would you tell people, like, because I have a range of listeners, and so I want to know what you might tell them. Maybe someone who's listening might have an issue or is wondering they've had an issue. I've had a lot of people come to me since starting this podcast and say, I never thought I had an issue, and after listening to your story, I think I do have an issue, and like, how do I get help? And that's been more in the eating disorder realm, but this is one reason I'm so excited to open up this podcast to other topics and other hard to talk about things, because I want there to be resources. And I mean, I can even add some resources on the website, but I should add the 12-step on there, which I will do, making a mental note right now. But I am curious, is there any like parting thoughts, or maybe even a question you want to pose to someone to ask themselves, to maybe get real with themselves and move past the denial of like, do I have a problem? Like, mine would be, I have quite a few, but like, mine would be, are you not eating the thing that you're craving or need to eat, but instead eating the thing that you think is going to keep you skinny? Because that's huge. And are you avoiding places or moments or experiences because of food? Because if you so those would be two of my big questions for someone, because most people with an eating disorder are avoiding certain situations with people, whether that's eating out or going to a party or even going to a friend's house around a time that people eat. So if it's in between lunch and dinner, you're safe. You already ate lunch, or you're eating dinner somewhere else, you can lie about it. But if it's lunchtime and someone's inviting you over and you're making excuses, then that's the question I have, is like, are you avoiding experiences because of food? So yeah, do you have anything that you would like, I guess, like put in their ear or make them think about or question, or a tip, or I mean, it could be multiple things. but I'm just curious because I think that could be helpful for someone.
I think if you are, first of all, you're not alone. If you are having any feelings about yourself and problems and addictions, no matter what they are, you aren't alone. There's always somebody else out there, or groups of people, or hundreds or thousands of people who share what you're going through, or what we're going through. So that's number one. And knowing that, when I learned that, was a big help. I want to speak from I statements maybe from this. I want to say that it's probably relevant to a mass of people, but I want to say if I think that I have a problem, and you can interpret this how you like, if I think I have a problem, I probably have a problem. If I think I have a substance addiction or whatever surrounds, I have a problem. If we think we have a problem, we think we have a problem. If you think you have a problem, you probably have a problem. Somebody like in my position who wasn't addicted to drugs, who could smoke a joint once a year or once every 3 years. I don't know how they can do that, but they can. They probably have not thought, I have a addiction to this drug. So, I'm not saying anybody's better or anybody's worse. And if that's what you're thinking, you're not alone, and there's probably something, you probably have a problem. You're not, I would say, to come up with a solution on your own is not what I would recommend. And you probably heard me repeat this many times, and it's just the truth that most likely you need a support group, you need a support source, you need a meeting where other people that have gone through the same type of things can help you. I'm not, counseling and therapy works great for people. I would probably do therapy again, in my life. I'm not saying that was the solution for me, because I needed people in my life that had gone through the same type of actions and downfalls and rock bottoms to be able to to hear them and to hear what they suggested. So whether that's a meeting, whether that's a group of people, that's going to work great. A question that I have for the group, for everyone. Do I have a question? Are you putting on a mask? Are you wearing a mask to hide the real you? And if your answer is yes, again, you're not alone. And there is a much healthier way, not just like physically, but mentally, and you'll get a huge burden off your back by taking off that mask and facing the facts of what is actually causing you to put on the mask.
I also just want to add, if you ever have to lie, just something to look at. Awesome. Yeah, those are really good. Really, really good. I mean, just the mask part alone is like, take a hard look. And I think some of us are obviously putting on a mask because we just like are insecure or have the issue, don't feel like we can be ourselves for other reasons. But even there, man, take it off. Find a way to be authentic and be who you are and express who you are. It's really powerful. I've learned that just with this project. This is hard to say. It's like the moment I let it out into the world, people were like, oh my gosh, I needed to read that, I needed to know this, and I just realized, we're all searching for someone to say, I've been where you are, I understand, we all are feeling the same way and thinking the same stuff and wanting the same stuff. We're all dealing with that human experience. So I do want to link 12-step programs in the show notes and also some extra resources, and then I'm going to double that and put them on my resources tab on the website for anyone who's listening who thinks they want to make the jump. And also, I do have a contact page on my website if anyone needs to reach out and just needs that extra push or whatnot.
I wanted to finish quickly on it. I ended on the mask, and you may not know you're wearing a mask until the lying to yourself and other people stops. So that may take some self-reflection in getting to that point. but most likely the mask is being worn if you're lying to other people, which also means you're probably lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel for you. I have so much empathy if that's what you're going through, and it's hard. It's the biggest struggle, and it's the biggest thing is to give up in active addiction. But you can do it. We can all do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree with that. I mean, I think your mind gets to a place where it really is stuck on that track and making you believe that you're not lying, and the denial is so real. And so, yeah, it really does take a hard, honest look, and sometimes that means talking to someone safe, whoever that is. So with that, I want to wrap it up and say thank you so much for joining me on this tough conversation. Definitely hard to talk about addiction, and for sharing your story and sharing the dark times and how you've gotten past it, and just maybe helping someone who falls upon this podcast and gets help because you came onto the podcast. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me and for making this podcast available, talking about the hard things.
I just want us all to have connection and a freaking full expressed life. See you guys next time. Thank you for being here. You can find me on Instagram and the web. Instagram is @thisishardtosay with a period between each word. The website is www.thisishardtosay.me. My more personal and graphic design account is @ChelseaWillett_designs. Those will also be in the show notes below. If you want to support this project and podcast, there's a few ways to do so. You can head to my website, click the support button in the top right of the navigation, and that will lead you to how to help. You can also submit your own story anonymously, or you can share who you are. If this podcast spoke to you, it would be so appreciated to subscribe, leave a review, click some stars, and share it with your people. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.